and it's Seeking Context. Here today with Becky Steiger in the science room of the Winona Tri-Plains High School. And it's very good to meet you. We're going to find out about the
Great.
life of a science teacher in small town America and how you make magic with a few kids.
Absolutely.
So, welcome to the show. Thanks so
Thank
much
you.
for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to start out by just asking you, can you tell me about the Winona School District? It is unique even for me as a
Mhm.
person who come from a class of 45 students
Right.
in Oakley, which is kind of a metropolis
It
by
is. It's
comparison.
huge compared to us. So our school is preschool actually twice a week
Okay.
through senior year. And we have 68 students,
Across
kindergarten.
preschool through
Yeah,
12.
well, kindergarten through 12th grade. And we have 11 preschool kids. So entire enrollment, yeah, we're at, what would that be? 79 students.
But this preschool, you've got a baby boom going
Oh,
on.
absolutely. We're looking
So,
forward in a few years.
all right. Well, and that is not where you've always taught.
No.
So I'm curious, like, what is the experience for a teacher in a class of such small students, guys?
You know, I really think my last 20 years before this was in preparation to come here, which might sound kind of funny because I think most people would think a small school would be easier to
Mhm.
teach in. I taught the last 20 plus years in a school of 1,800 in the high school only.
That's on the
Um,
other end of the bell curve.
yeah, and I chose to come to Winona, knowing that it had small classes, knowing I wanted to end my career in a place that I could really make a difference, kind of be recharged back into why I started teaching. And you really get to know the students here,
Hmm.
which is a real blessing as a teacher. In the big schools, really students disappear, teachers kind of disappear. You can really get lost in the crowd.
Hmm.
And here, uh, everybody knows if you have a sniffle. And so, honestly, that's a great blessing to be in a place like that and to be able to be part of that family because we are definitely family here.
Wow, that is really cool.
Mhm.
And so tell me about science.
So I have taught science for 24 years.
Hmm.
I'm kind of a unicorn because I'm old enough that I'm certified to teach pretty much any science that there happens to be. And I also like most of the sciences. So many science teachers, they kind of go life science or they go
Hmm.
physical science. And I'm more of a hybrid. So my first degree is actually in wildlife biology. And then I was also raised on a farm. And then I additionally have an education degree. So currently here at Tri Plains, I teach seventh grade life science, eighth grade physical science, ninth grade, it's a combo earth and physical science, 10th grade biology, juniors chemistry and anatomy and physiology. Started a new class called agri-science this year that I co-teach with our ag teacher, Chris Kirk. And every other year, I teach advanced biology or physics, depending on what we need.
Okay. So it's like you're back in college taking the maximum load.
Right, right. And
How do you do the syllabus when you are, I
uh,
mean, you've only been here for a few years,
this
right?
is only my second year here. So honestly, all the years leading up to this really prepared me because I had to be able to handle big classes and lots of different things that I've taught. And I came to Tri Plains, and it's kind of like, wow, I haven't taught seventh grade since 1998. Um, I got to haul some of that old science, some of that basic science out of my brain.
Mhm.
But it's a great challenge. I'm that person that I like change. I like to constantly keep up with things. So it's been good for me too.
Had you taught that breadth of ages in your previous career?
My very first job, I taught seventh grade through juniors at Syracuse, Kansas. I did
Mhm.
that my very first year. And most of my career, 22 years, have been at the high school level.
Okay. Wow. And were you here during COVID or were you mid COVID?
No, I was actually at my previous school.
Okay.
So I taught remotely from my home.
Mhm.
I actually set up a little camera and we still had class every day. And my students tuned in and had my own little show. Um, I even made up. So we have these mannequins that are kind of these plastic sculptures that we add clay to. I made little baggies and I put them out on the curb, and a kid would text me when they were going to come by and pick it up. And so I made take home kind of labs and things that they could really use.
Was your class small enough that the online environment worked out there?
I average 25 to 30 per student per class, excuse me.
And those are different students, of
And
course,
those
every
different students, so I had around 100 students that I was teaching online.
okay. I never even really thought of this, but how do you grade 100 students?
So I used an online platform, and so a lot of it became project based.
Mhm.
And I took a tremendous amount of time of making everything in a way that could be taught online and yet interactive. And I was really tired in May.
Summer break was needed.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, can you, at a high level, compare the experience? Let's say that a listener is out there thinking,
Hmm.
maybe I should try a small school. What are you getting yourself into when you make you take that job offer from
Hmm.
someplace that sounds like you started out saying it seemed like a lower job on the career path, but it's at the top of the hill for you.
You know, when you look at lesson plans or you start thinking about how you're going to teach, most classroom lessons are set up to do, oh, break your students into small groups. Now discuss with your teammate. Now discuss with the whole class. Well,
Mhm.
I mean, how many seating arrangements can you make with four? Hey, you two group today. Hey, trade partners. So, in some ways, it's a real challenge because if you're wanting discussion and you're really wanting to get new ideas, sometimes they all have the same idea
Mhm.
and they all have very similar background experiences. So, you don't always have that depth and breadth of options to choose from. So sometimes I have to supplement and I have to bring in, well, what if you did this or what if that? Because they are more homogeneous in their approach to
Mhm.
thinking here. And so that's a challenge. And man, if somebody's sick and you only have three in class, do you go on? Do you not go on? I mean, it just has its own challenges.
Right, because you're thinking of that one student. That's 25% of your student
Right,
body that's missing out on content.
right. So there's choices that if one kid's gone out of 30, you're like, well, catch you up tomorrow.
Right.
So
And do whatever you can do.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Now, I have maintained my online platform. So my students can go to Google Classroom and they can see what we do every day, whether they're here or not. And I did that in my big class. I did that in my small class. And that's something I maintained. To me, it doesn't matter how many students I have. I want them to be able to see what we're going to do ahead of time. If they're sick, they can go on there and get the lesson.
Right. But that's only the content. You're not recording yourself.
No,
There's not a video of class
no,
or
I
anything
had
like
to
that.
do that with COVID.
Right.
Oof. Yeah, videoing
Unpleasant.
my. I like to respond to my students, and so if you can't record student voices for privacy reasons, it makes it tough.
Oh, you
Our
can't?
our district did not want us to have student voices on recordings.
Well, I can see that being a big challenge in
Yeah,
learning together.
yeah. So I had to do asynchronous recordings, just me talking. Yay! I mean,
What?
I'm a decent lecturer, but
Right.
yeah, the dog got bored.
Right. Well, so was COVID and the difficulty in teaching in that experience, was that a factor in your decision to come back? Or what uh, caused you to make the change? Well, this isn't really back for you personally.
No, it was a different school entirely. COVID was eye opening for me because I was able to really spend more time at home. I'm a workaholic,
Mhm.
and I don't do anything halfway. And so when I was at home trying to prepare all of these things that could really work well across electronic media, I remembered who Becky was and not just Mrs. Steiger because I
Mhm.
also had some time away from it. And I realized that I'd kind of lost me and had just become Mrs. Steiger.
Hmm.
And so the opportunity arose to move actually back to Western Kansas to where my husband grew up to one of our family farms. And frankly, I was kind of tired. I was tired of teaching. I was really tired of the bureaucracy that goes along with big schools.
Mhm.
And our small school, it's like we went back in time in education,
Mhm.
except we still have technology
Back in time in a good way.
in a good way, in a great way. We still have the family unit. We still have empathy. We still have kindness. We still have a lot of those values in our school
Mhm.
that I felt like I'd lost in my bigger environment.
Do you feel like that the loss of those values happened over the course of your career, or is the size of a school that's so large just unable to have values like that?
It has changed over the course of my career. It's just magnified at that big level.
Mhm.
So I guess I would say both.
Right. And for this school, I would imagine that just staying alive financially is probably a challenge. Do you have any uh, visibility as a teacher into what's necessary to keep a school open when small schools tend to merge to
Right.
have economies of scale?
So I'm lucky enough to get to be on our team of three that is in charge of KISA, it's called, which is part of the state of Kansas way of accrediting schools.
Mhm.
And so my job, along with the committee, is to really justify keeping our school accredited. And so if we're accredited, we get funding from the state. And that financial support is huge to us. So anything I can do to get publicity, honestly,
Mhm.
whether it's a podcast, whether it's an interview with the state, whether it's applying for a grant, anything that gets our name out there that says, hey, Winona is what you're all missing. Tri Plains has that formula that the other schools are looking for.
Right. And you taught previously in Oakley, which is also a small
Right?
school. Do you think that there are differences between the education in Oakley, Kansas and Winona, Kansas?
Absolutely.
And is that how would you describe those?
So Oakley has a mid-sized environment, really, compared to us. They have
For
more
Kansas.
students. Yeah, for Kansas, they have more students, so they have more. I guess you could say they have an easier time having more classes offered. For instance,
Mhm.
we have faculty that, I mean, I teach 7 hours or seven different classes a day. That's all I can fit in. And so one of the challenges is how many courses can we offer? So if we want to get a student through a certain career field, can we offer what they need? And so that's a big challenge for us. I mean, just having enough faculty because we can't hire somebody else and justify an extra expense of
Mhm.
salary if they don't have a full schedule. So
Right.
that's a big difference. From the student perspective, I think we can tailor it to you. I mean, I added agri-science because we had a lot of kids that wanted to have an agricultural background. So I said, hey, I'm a science teacher. I grew up with ag. Um, I'll teach a science class that fits you.
Wow.
And
Cool.
so I have that luxury here. If I dream it up, they'll let me do it.
That's pretty nice. I guess is
Old
that
school bell.
we have old school bells and study hall's over, I
Yes,
guess,
actually,
end of the day.
school is letting out now.
Okay. All right. Well, we're in the mix of it, but you don't have anything last period
No,
for
I'm
you.
good. I'm
Okay.
good.
Uh, so for teachers that are here, it seems like you can't rest on your laurels.
Oh,
Or
no.
like, what happens when a teacher gets pregnant? I mean, how do you cover for somebody when what if what if you're gone for a day? How does a sub do 7 classes?
So my students are trained to look at Google Classroom. I put everything in there and they know. They better look at the front lab table because that's where I've left it. But it's a challenge. So we cover for each other. So
Mhm.
there's times I might be teaching anatomy and I have the seventh graders in the back
Mhm.
because there was no one to cover that class. And so I put them onto something, and if they don't have something to work on, I know what they had in science. So I'm that jerk teacher that's like, hey, you didn't finish your science. So something like that. But there's a lot of times my planning period is really hosting students from a teacher who's absent.
Right.
We did have a teacher who was pregnant last spring. We were able to hire a retired teacher from the
Mhm.
area to fill in, but it was challenging.
Right. Right. So you wouldn't mind if the student body grew a bit so you could have more support from a larger teaching staff.
That would be all right. If we had, you know, the size of the school is one of our bonuses. It's just one of our limitations as far as any school right now is really struggling with finding substitute guest teachers.
Hmm.
There just don't exist, much less finding enough classroom teachers.
Right. What if I wanted to, let's say I'm a local citizen and I think, well, maybe I could teach a science class or I
Mhm.
could teach a social studies class. Um, I'm just currently personally unaware of the process. Do I have to go out and get an education degree, or can local citizens that want to help out in a part-time capacity to teach one class a semester or something?
So the state of Kansas has become much more open in the last 2 years because of our shortage of teachers.
Hmm.
You'd have to have a background check run, and you also, if you have to have a high school diploma now, is what they've reduced it to, and the district has to approve it for you to be a substitute teacher.
Okay.
Now, if you wanted to come teach a class, the school board would have to approve that as a plan.
Mhm.
But as long as you have the background check, and it used to be if you have a associate's degree, then you would qualify. Now it's dropped down to high school diploma.
Okay.
So honestly, if somebody was an expert in the community and they were really interested in teaching a course, it would be up to the school board to hire them and the state of Kansas to run the background check.
Cool. So that
Yeah,
is a possibility for
absolutely.
addressing this sort of staffing shortage.
Yes. I
And then maybe
saw,
they'd fall in love with teaching
yeah,
and
I
just do
saw
that.
down in Garden City, there's a bank in town that is allowing their employees time off to go be a substitute teacher at the high school
Wow,
for a day here and there to help out with the shortage.
that's really cool.
Yeah, I
Cool.
thought it's
Well,
kind
we'll
of a neat way to.
put a link to that on the site or something
Yeah.
in the scroll. Can you tell me about what drew you to teaching? Is this your first career?
So I never was going to be a teacher. Um, and actually, I tell students, I think that's why I've stayed. So I was pre med in my first years of college. And honestly, I was afraid of failing,
Of failing the whole process to
of
become a doctor
failing anything.
in life?
Yes, I had to be perfect.
Okay.
And so if I didn't try something out, then I wouldn't fail.
Hmm.
So,
Clever.
yeah, that works, right? 100% success if you never try. So, honestly, I switched majors away from pre med because I was afraid. I was afraid of the MCAT, I was afraid of failing. I came from a moderately sized school myself. I'd always been the smart one, been the best. And then I went to K State and wow, there's other people and they're smarter, faster, bigger, brighter, at least in my mind.
Hmm.
And I thought, I don't think I measure up. So I switched and I went to wildlife biology. When I was ready to graduate from that, happened to be when the federal government made quite a few cuts to funding to states. Back then it was parks and wildlife programs, fisheries and biology programs. And I'm thinking, wow, I need a job. So I wandered across campus, added a second major, um, and thought, well, I'll just teach for a little while and then, you know, that'll just be for a while.
Right.
I haven't left yet. Turned out I kind of like coaching too,
Hmm.
and the schedule's pretty sweet. So I kind of had a knack for it, and I
How
realized,
do you mean? What is sweet about the schedule of a teacher or of a
oh,
coach?
you still get Christmas break, you still
Okay.
get spring break, you get the kid breaks.
Okay.
So you're
That's
an
true.
adult with like a kid schedule.
And
Now,
you don't
people,
teach summers either,
well,
right?
people think we get summers off, so you do get some time.
Mhm.
There's a lot of work that goes on in the summer that is kind of behind the scenes, but you still get a lot more time off than you normally would. Instead, we squish all our time into the basically 10 months a year that we're in session.
Right.
So um, it's just shifted time, not truly time off. But
Mhm.
it is nice to be able to have some of those days where you don't go into school.
Right.
But the schedule worked well. My husband's a teacher,
Mhm.
so we were parallel in that way. and I like to coach. And it turns out, I think this is where I was meant to be. It's where God placed me so I could really teach students, it's okay to fail. I tell them now, fail just means first attempt in learning.
Mhm.
And you're only a failure if you stay there. And so, really, I was put here to bring that message to my students. And I've had so many kids like me. I could see it in their eyes. I said, you know what? You need to fail right now. You need to get over it and realize, don't let that stop you.
Did you have a big failure that made you realize I'm strong enough to go through mistakes?
Not a single one, not
Mhm.
like a pivotal moment that
Yeah.
really changed me. It was more of a coming around in a mindset as I matured, and hopefully you
Mhm.
gain wisdom as you get older,
Right.
and realized that's why I changed. I didn't want to fail. I thought I had to be perfect. And realizing, I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Right.
I never actually had an answer for that in high school and early on in college. I
Because
just
you
thought that,
succeeded at the high
yeah.
school curriculum
And I thought the sky would fall.
when you made one mistake,
Yes,
the
yes.
minus on that credit
Right.
on that grade report.
If I got a 98 out of 100, I dwelled on the two I missed.
Right. Right. If someone is thinking about going into the profession of teaching or looking at it, uh, what advice do you have for them to figure out if it might be a fit?
You know, I I'm not a typical teacher, is how I say it. I don't think I look and sound and do like teachers do. Um, I think you have to be authentic. Kids are very good readers of honesty,
Hmm.
but they are a great audience to try things out, and they are honest as the day is long, which works well for me because I'm a pretty plain spoken person.
Uh-huh.
But if you're considering education as a career, I know the financial side everyone talks about um, isn't as high as other careers for your college education, but life isn't about the money. You'll
Right.
have enough. This job is going to give back. It's going to feed your soul. It's going to make you realize your shortcomings and help you grow as a person.
Hmm.
And then you get to share that with all the next generation. You
Wow.
you matter
So you would say that you have learned things from your students.
every day. Sometimes it's TikTok, but honestly, it's helped me reflect on what's important to me as a person, as a person of faith. It reaffirms why I'm here. It helps me know humility because you have to be on your game all the time. But I think too many people think you have to be perfect as in front of the classroom as a teacher. You don't
Right.
have to know all the answers. You just have to say we don't know yet.
I mean, in terms of like what science understands about the universe or what they know about the depth of a subject matter.
Anything. They will ask you anything. Sometimes I'm saddened by things that I've been asked, situations that I've seen, things I've helped students work through. But at the same time, I feel honored to be able to be the one they come to.
Mm.
I mean, I had a girl, high school girl, and she came to me, and her mom had been arrested. Dad wasn't in the picture. Stepdad was arrested. She was in high school, and she was coming to me because she was being asked about. Well, there are four kids in her family, and child services couldn't place all four together. So she wanted to know, should she take the youngest one, which was 18 months, with her? Should she take the 5-year-old with her, or should she take the seventh grader with her? Because she wasn't sure which one needed her the most.
Wow.
I mean,
And how old was
biology
she?
and chemistry doesn't seem to matter when you come to that. She was 16.
And you were the person that she looked to for,
Yep.
well, that'll give you meaning if nothing else
Yeah.
in your day.
So, when people talk about what job they want to do the rest of their lives, this isn't a job. This is a lifestyle. It's a life choice. It's a pathway you get put on. You, we talk about the periodic table, or we talk about stars or bio, whatever the topic of the day is. But
Mhm.
when it comes down to it, I'm in charge of building their self, their self-image, building who they are, what their decisions are. I mean, I'm not saying they don't learn that at home, but all the hours that they're in my care and under my watch, that's my job.
Mhm. When you have students that, I know there's self-esteem problems, social media is really a
Hmm.
difficult landscape that nobody in our generation experienced.
No.
Um, and the pharmaceutical drug problem is
Hmm.
something nobody in our generation experienced, I don't think. How are you uh, how are you making a connection with students? And I guess maybe it's easier here
Yeah.
because they're so small. Were you able to make connections like that in a larger school? How can those teachers find a way to
Get there.
connect to get there with a generation that's experiencing something that we don't have first person experience with?
So I think as a teacher, I have to be painfully honest with my students and totally transparent. So I don't sugarcoat. If they ask a question, I have to answer them honestly to the best I can. I have to build relationships instantly. So day one, I have to care about you.
Mhm.
And that's the piece teachers that leave the profession. A lot of young teachers only stay 3 years now. If you make it to five, that's like a long career in education.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. But they miss that piece. They're teaching their curriculum. They didn't realize they're teaching people their curriculum.
And once you realize that, you can't really leave.
No, that's why I'm still
You're
here.
trapped.
Yeah, I'm trapped in a good way.
Right.
I feel like if I would leave, it's kind of like who's gonna fill that void.
Mhm. What about, do you have any thoughts for students? What if they don't have you? How can students, you know, take charge of their lives?
They have to find their person.
Mhm.
I hope everyone would find a person, and that's who they trust, whether it's someone older in their family, in their church, in their community. They need to find their person that they can be totally honest with, that they can trust with anything they think, feel, say, or need.
Mhm. Well, it kind of sounds like a call to the rest of us people that aren't children anymore
Right.
to look for who's doesn't have someone.
It is. I mean, it's really hard in those big schools because my students here, they can't get away from me. I mean, I'm right there. It's like, how are you today? In those big schools, there were kids that they could go through their whole day and have no one speak to them.
Mm.
And it's a sad scenario that we have, and especially post COVID, I noticed the mask was a security blanket in a way that you could hide behind it. You didn't have to interact, you didn't have to ask questions, and nobody got in your space.
Mhm.
And I think we've struggled coming out of that to really make those connections again
Right.
because they're intimate and they're personal and they feel sometimes too much for
Mm.
kids. It's hard.
Well, and I guess if you started school, you were a kindergarten or first grader when COVID started,
Yeah,
all of your education was in a mask.
right. 2 years, those students didn't see their classmates.
Mhm.
It was so odd for me when I went back after COVID the next year. We still had to wear masks the school year after. And a kid might take their mask off just for a second to blow their nose or something. And I would go, wow, that's what they look like. Because my brain had filled in what I thought they looked like.
Mm.
And it was not the same. And I thought, wow, they don't know what I look like.
Wow.
And there's so much reading of facial gestures and expressions that goes on that you miss.
Right.
And I fear the little ones maybe they had to delay developing some of that.
Right. Because you don't even think about that a part of your childhood development.
No.
They were sort of taught to be fearful of anyone.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh, can you talk about coming back or coming to a rural community where uh, your husband
Mhm.
is from here?
Right.
Did you get welcomed into the community? Because man, small towns we can kind of box out new
Right.
people.
So that's a beautiful thing about Winona is I never felt like an outsider.
Mhm.
I do joke with my principal, and he's our principal slash superintendent, that we're the imports because we weren't born here. A lot of our teachers were,
Mhm.
but
The two of you, you
yeah,
and
the
the
two of
principal,
us
are
were
the
not. We're the
imported.
imports. A lot of the other ones were very, very close in this area, or they graduated from here.
Uh-huh.
But with that said, they're so welcoming, and they were just so excited to have a science teacher
Mhm.
that brought in just new experiences, new perspective.
Right. So that's another plug for Winona. If you would like to take a job
Yes,
here, they will be joyful.
they will
Uh,
bring you a casserole. They will welcome you with open arms. I
right.
mean,
And that's not a figurative, that's a literal
no, I'm
casserole.
literally bring you a lasagna if you need it. And if you're sick, I'm not joking. They would come to your house, bring you anything you need. People will check up on you. We
Mhm.
have a calendar with everyone's birth date, anniversary on it for the community.
Not just the school,
Oh no.
the whole community.
Yes.
Wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we have
Go Winona.
we have a fundraiser that you can have your birthday put in it. So it's kind of cool.
That's really cool. Um, well, I think this episode is likely to air right close to Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
Can you tell me what you have to be thankful for?
I don't know if your program's long enough.
We can
uh,
edit it out. Just tell me what comes sort of
you know,
bu- bubbles up to the top of the list.
I'm thankful that I had all of the experiences up till now. In my previous job, because I was also close to K State, I was able to be part of a grant program that I traveled for presentations, for trainings. I mean, I went to Washington, D.C., I presented in Philadelphia, I even got to go to Russia for 2 weeks.
As part of
Um,
your studies at K-State,
Actually, I
or as
was
part of the
a
grant that you worked?
teacher representative for a grant that was with K State.
Wow.
Um, I've been all over the country, and I guess you could include part of the world as my training ground for the science side.
Mhm.
Um, but all of that is second to my family, um, my family here at Winona, my students. I added up, just a couple years ago, how many thousands of students I've had between teaching and coaching, and the fact that if I could even have an impact on them just a little bit, I'm so thankful to be in that job,
Mhm.
and that my job is really not a job, it's a lifestyle. My family is wonderfully supportive. Um, the just the fact that I can make a difference
Mhm.
during my time here on Earth is something I'm wonderfully thankful for.
Well, that's great.
Mhm.
I think that's a wonderful place to stop.
Great.
Thank you. I'm
Mhm.
thankful that you are here in Winona making magic with all
Absolutely.
of these young people, and that you took the time to talk to us today and uh, share tremendous amounts of context that I didn't know about the world of teaching and the
Mhm.
world of teaching in Winona and the difference that you can make in people's
Great.
lives.
I thank you for your time too, Justin, and for coming here and letting us advertise our little oasis in education. Go Winona. And
Go
when
Winona,
looking for a little school to come to, we'll raise them from age 3 through graduation.
right here in this building.
Absolutely.
The classroom next door is preschool.
Yes. I hung up some coats this morning.
All right. Well, until next time, that's Justin signing off from Winona, Kansas,
Thank
with
you.
Becky Steiger, science teacher extraordinaire.
Thank you.
And your feet